So I want to start off each interview just by asking the interviewee, what tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us the quick version, who you are, where you come from, and what you do.
Yeah. Okay. So for those that don't know me, hi, I'm David. Uh, I graduated from UT, the degree in neuroscience, and we're moving up to New York. I say we, Chrissy and I just got married, and we're moving up to New York, and she's going to Columbia Teachers College, getting her master's, and I'll be working hopefully with the university in a research lab. So crazy stuff. We're excited. So my past leading up to now is, I guess I'll start with my parents. My dad is from the mountains in Querétaro, Mexico, and my mom is from the beaches in Yucatan. And then they both met up here in Texas in Garland near Dallas. And, they had a family. I have an older brother and an older sister. And my dad told my mom, if you have another one, I'm leaving you. And then here I am.
Oh my God.
And he was excited. And long story short, he didn't leave. He was excited. But that's the story of my birth.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
Grew up in Rowlett, Texas, basically my whole life. Elementary school, middle school, high school. I was in the marching band, and that was amazing. That's when I really found that I have a voice. Um, Not specifically just to one object or one subject, more of just, hey, I can talk and I have opinions and I'm allowed, people want to hear my opinions. And of course, I went to community college in Dallas for 2 years, and I finished out my bachelor's here at UT. And then, like what I just said, Grace and I got married and we're moving up to New York. That's
Awesome.
the brief version.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've acknowledged in all these interviews is that racism isn't just something that affects one part of the world or one part of our country or just one time period in our country. At the same time, we've also talked about how racism affects individuals in different aspects of their lives. And one of the areas we've talked about is education. Have you experienced racism in any part of your education?
Um, not not in the way that most stories have been told. Uh, for me, it's been more of I grew up in a smaller town in Texas, so um, there weren't too many diverse cultures, be it from international or political or social. Just kind of just, hey, everybody's here. We're all going to college, and that's that. It wasn't until high school that we began taking AP tests and um, similar. Before they had been taxed, now it had been STAR tests at the time. Uh, that was, oh, wait a minute, like I'm the only brown person here, and it wasn't necessarily racism. It was just kind of like, oh, maybe I don't belong, but I do. Uh, I I didn't experience any blatant racism. Um, One thing that I can say that maybe not everyone can is I'm able to pass. So because I have lighter skin, um, with more Caucasian crowds, I can blend in. With more Mexican or Latino crowds, I can blend in. I'm able to swim both pools
Okay.
essentially. So for me, I've been able to scratch the surface of any side I've been around.
Um, it's just in our conversations, just the two of us, you've shared a little bit kind of about that tension between the Mexican identity and American identity and kind of tensions pulling in both ways. Can you share a little bit about that in your experience?
Yeah, so just for everybody watching, um, so I was born here in the United States, but my parents are from Mexico. And so all the family that's still in Mexico is very much, yes, pro Mexico, pro heritage. And that's nothing's wrong with that. It's great. But for me, my dad was the first of his family, along with my mom. She was the first of her family to come along. So we had no extended family here until years down the line. But my heritage was here in the US. And so there was within my family, there was a bit of tension. Uh, are you Mexican enough for the family? And then, of course, with friends and stuff, are you American enough for the family? Um, for the Mexican side, it was that was expressed mostly through language. Since I had no family uh, to talk Spanish with here in the States, I just grew up learning English. There wasn't a need for Spanish. In addition to the bilingual education, I'll get to that later. I forgot like that's something in education. Uh, but there wasn't a need for me to know Spanish. My friends spoke English, my teacher spoke English. I just grew up learning English. So whenever we would visit family in Mexico, there was oh, you're American. You're not Mexican. You are not of the family. And they shunned me. Not, not you are no longer allowed from the family, just couldn't eat with the same people and get snacks. And of course, just language barriers are hard for anyone. I don't know if anyone's done Let's Start Talking. Totally do it. Great program. Just a little plug in there. Language barriers are just, it's hard. And so
Yeah.
that just causes friction. And especially when that's tied to identity, it's assumed you don't know this subject, therefore you don't know us.
Yeah.
A bit of an unfortunate circumstance, but that's my experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the areas we've talked about in each of these interviews is maybe racism that you experience in the workplace. And everybody has struggles in their jobs, whether they just do their job just to kind of support their family and it's not really something they're passionate, or they have a jerk of a boss. That's common experience for a lot of people. But an additional factor that can affect persons of color is the experience of racism in the workplace. Has that ever been your experience, whether it's subtle or overt?
Only slightly, and I'll delve into that. For me, race to me is assumed culture. So if you're Mexican, the assumed culture is Spanish. Especially since Catholicism is huge in Central and South and Mexico, uh, Central America, South America, and Mexico. It's assumed, oh, you're Mexican, you're you are a Catholic Spanish-speaking person. So whenever I would get hired for a job, the assumption was I did speak Spanish. And sometimes that expectation was thrown upon me, not in a mean way, just like, David, I don't know Spanish. Quick, go talk with this patient. I'm like, hola. And so it's not a racism of malice. It's just assumed culture.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful because one of the things that has come up so often in these interviews is really subtle stuff, implications, nothing, not always overt or malicious. Um, Another area we've talked about with some of our interviewees is just the racism that one might experience in church, because these interviews are all for Christians who are watching this series, and this is important because Christians have ranged from fighting on the front lines of the civil rights movement in the 60s and have led the charge. And other Christians were kind of the worst perpetrators in some instances. So, have you experienced racism in the church? Tell us a little bit about that.
So any racism that I may have experienced have been more subtle. It hasn't really been church as a whole. It's rather been just more individuals, just not understanding, a bit of a sheltering. So only slightly. I do have a humorous story though. um, back at my old church in Dallas, uh, they actually had a video of kind of like, uh, I call it poking at Christian culture. And one of them was, oh my gosh, it's Mission Sunday. Quick, grab the only Asian family we have in the family. Come on, in the church. Come on, while I have them speak up about diversity. And so that's kind of like a goofy thing. It was known in the Dallas church that, hey, diversity is just one of the points that isn't our strongest. And I think for me that was really healthy. It's just like a, hey, we're not as I'm thinking of a good word for it. I don't want to keep using the word diverse, but we're not as we don't have as many different perspectives as we would like to get to. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. One thing that we've asked each person in the interview is, what would you say to fellow Christians who are white, whether that's a word of encouragement or a word of challenge? What would you like to say to fellow Christians who are white?
Mm-hmm. Um, I do want to give a word of encouragement, like, hey, uh, the church is really growing and becoming more diverse as just the general society is becoming more diverse and global with the internet. I think one thing that I've really struggled with um, is I've seen a lot of white church members, particularly, but white people in general, they've come under fire because they are white, and and it's just like, ah, man, like, hey, like a Mexican, people of my own family said like, oh, they're white, they don't know. It's like, no, like, you white people in the church, go ahead and be loud and proud. Uh, don't you don't have to worry that you don't have to worry about the lack of ignorance. Sorry, scratch that one. You don't have to be worried that you're not of a different color, that you're not able to have a broad perspective. I think that's one thing, just word of encouragement. If you feel you have a broad perspective, share and talk in healthy ways. And hey, chances are you probably do. Yeah, race is only one aspect of diversity.
Yeah. What would you want to say to any people of color who may be watching this, just as a word of encouragement?
Yeah, I think something that's been said a lot is you are not alone, and white people, dark people, light colored people, uh, we're all people and we're all different and diverse. I guess don't get into the danger of a single person cannot be diverse unto themselves. A person themselves is one perspective, and you need lots of different people, many different colors, white included, in order to be diverse. I myself am not a diverse person because I am one person. When I am involved in groups of people who look different and who think differently than me, then the group becomes diverse. So yeah, mix and mingle, be open to it.
Awesome. Well, these interviews are meant to share our experiences, and any stories are always helpful. Is there any other stories you could think of, or any experiences you wanted to share before we close up the interview?
Yeah, I'll touch on the bilingual education I do want to share because I think that's such an important aspect that needs to be addressed, and I don't think anyone knows how to address it. I don't know if it's Texas particularly or if it's all across the U.S., but there is something called bilingual education in elementary schools, and so the thought is, hey, let's teach students at a young age to know Spanish as well as English growing up. Um, what ends up happening is all the Spanish speaking families send their kids through bilingual education, and they, you know, they're taught Spanish, but they only know Spanish. They don't know English. And so the teacher is not allowed to speak a word of English. And these Spanish speaking students are pigeonholed into a Spanish speaking environment until they reach middle school. And then all of a sudden, everything is in English. But then that's something to understand. There are educational systems unintentionally set in place that have pigeonholed many of my friends and many other people into a subpar education because of just, oh, we didn't know how to, because there was no screening process and there wasn't a collection. So you had asked earlier, Mitch, about racism in education. I think that was um, an unintentional event that had happened that has created divides between Spanish
Mhm.
speakers and non-Spanish speakers within elementary schools in Texas.
That's
So
really helpful.
yeah,
That's really helpful.
everyone go make sure.
Yeah, that's your message at the end of this. Go learn Spanish.
Oh, Spanish, and learn why some people are pigeonholed into speaking Spanish. One
Yeah.
complaint that I hear on everyone in Texas I ever heard is, how come they don't know English? They should know English. There are systems in place that have kept people from knowing only Spanish. And if you're blaming a kid for knowing only Spanish, then refocus on what the issue is. The issue is something's pushing someone. Yeah,
Mhm.
but that's me.
Well, thanks so much. This is so good. One thing that I'm really excited about this whole interview process is making sure diverse perspectives and experiences are shared. So thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.